Hey everybody, On the Run with Beards and Dunn is back. It's just Beards and I. We don't have a guest this week. I know the week kind of got away from me, Beards, but let's should we wet the people, anybody who might be listening to this podcast?
Yeah.
And they might want to tune in because we're planning on our next podcast to have a guest. And I'm gonna let Dick introduce potentially who our next guest is gonna be.
Yeah.
Who is it, Dick?
So many people, especially if you're Mike and I's age, you've heard of a runner from New Zealand. His name is Rod Dixon. And Rod, the talent this guy has from the mile up through the marathon, world cross country, he's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And anytime my wife Jill sees him or sees a picture of him, she just like melts because he's one of the best looking guys you'll ever see.
So does Karen. We saw him in New York, and she said that's a good looking fella.
Yeah, and so I've known Rod for 40 years, and so I contacted him last week, and he's back in his home country of New Zealand now. But he said, Dick, I'd love to do a podcast with you and Dunn, and so we're gonna try to get it set up for this next week sometime. Now you got to remember, what is he, Mike? He's 17 hours ahead
of us.
Yeah.
The other side of the world,
right?
Which amazes me that we can actually communicate
so
and have a nice
when
conversation.
Dunn and I do chat with Rod, it's going to be, let's say we do it on a Wednesday, it's going to be Thursday for Rod.
Yeah, and so if we do it at 5:00 at night for us, it'll be 10 in the morning the next day for him. And so this is going to take a little planning, and we're not that smart.
Well,
but, Rod Dixon is I don't like to use the word heroes, but I admired him. He was an Olympic bronze medalist in 1972. But Beards, what did he do at the New York City Marathon? What year was that?
In 1983. 1983.
He won the dang thing.
So Jeff Smith from England was basically leading the race. Rod caught him with, I don't know,
a quarter mile,
maybe a quarter mile to go, and won the race. Ran 2:08:59. This is a guy that started out as a
miler.
Yeah. And then Jeff Smith, I'll try to get him on someday too. He basically finished but collapsed at the finish line. He's laying on the ground. Rod is on his knees looking up, thanking the good Lord. I tell you, Dunn and our listeners, you will, when we get Rod on, and hopefully it'll be next week sometime, you are going to love this podcast because this guy is something else. His range is unbelievable.
Like no one else's that I can
think of. No one else's that I know of.
No, that picture of him on his knees, basically with his hands like in prayer, thanking the good Lord, like you said, Dick, for giving him the ability, the strength to finish. He was trying to catch that guy ahead of him, and he caught him. Jeff Smith crosses the line, collapses, and that picture of Jeff laying on the ground, basically, dead to the world almost. Rod so graciously, just exalting what he just did. It's the ultimate. What's that old thing that Jim McKay, the something of victory, the
thrill of victory,
the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat.
Yes,
that's the perfect picture because it shows Rod in the thrill of victory and poor Jeff Smith and the agony of defeat. That
would have been a great thing for them to use on that show.
No kidding. In fact, and so if anybody's listening, try to Google that. Rod Dixon, Jeff Smith, finish line.
1983 New York City Marathon.
It's an iconic photo. Anyway, that is so cool. And so I can't wait. I'm going to have a hard time sleeping between now and then. So, and for you, Dick, what happened to last Saturday? I think there was a big date in the state of Minnesota.
It's a big day for me and a big day for many Minnesotans. It was the opening day of the 2024 fishing season here in Minnesota. So we're one of the only states that has a closed season on game fish. Like our state fish is the walleye, and that's what everybody likes to pursue. But that includes northern pike and largemouth and smallmouth bass. So opening day in Minnesota is a big, big deal. And so I never book a guide trip on opening day because you don't know where those fish are going to be. So I took a young friend of mine that I've helped get in the guide business from town here named Brady Loudon, and we went out and we just had a ball. And most Minnesota openers, they always open the second Saturday in May. I've been out there when it's snowing and sleeting, windy and miserable. This year, it was like 70 degrees, sunny skies, virtually no wind, and the fish were quite cooperative. So it made for a great day to get out there.
How many people do they estimate are on the water at some time that day? Do they even have
so
a
on
guesstimate?
opening day, they estimate 500,000 anglers are out on Minnesota's 15th, we're the land of 10,000 lakes. We actually have over 15,000. And a lot of guys and gals that are out there on opening weekend, it becomes a tradition. They've been doing it for 40, 50 years. And a lot of times for those folks, that's the only time they might fish all season long. But it's a tradition. So cool. And from a biological standpoint, there's no reason to have a closed season. Most states don't. But that tradition here in Minnesota for opening fishing is like no other, and they'll never change it. So it's a big deal here.
That is so awesome. And you're right in the thick of it all.
Right in the thick of it. 400 lakes within 20-mile radius of Bemidji.
Well, let's get going here.
Yes.
We like to give some service to our listeners. They maybe our goal here is always to try to motivate people and educate. And if we have fun and entertain, that's great on the same page. But we had Joe Henderson on last week.
What a fun deal that was.
Oh, he is such a classy guy, humble.
Oh,
if I had written one book about running, I know Dick, you've written one, and it didn't go to your head. Dick, Joe's written like 30.
I know.
And, if there was a doctorate in running, he would be the top of the list of who's
absolutely
running knowledge. And, I think, he's just a class guy, and it was such a joy to get to visit with him. And I don't think he gets the credit he deserves for helping so many people, learn how to run successfully and enjoyably.
I agree with you 100%, Don. It's like, he came up with a concept that helped so many people, but like you said, he never really got the credit for it.
It was probably because it was pre-internet days,
right?
We didn't have YouTube and podcasts and stuff, and it was kind of just, if you were really into it, you might buy one of the books or something like that. But he, a lot of people look at running as punishment. I love the T-shirt. A lot of cross-country teams, I see them wear it during warm-up. It said, "Our sport is other sports' punishment."
So true.
Yeah, because the people look at running as like, oh, that is just like torture.
Well,
that's like punishment. I remember it's like pain.
And Dunn, I remember in high school, that I had friends on the football team, and if they screwed up or something, the coach would go, "All right, 3 laps around the goalpost," and they just
they hated it. Yeah, because it's wearing your uniform and running, and those guys are more fast twitch muscle fiber. They're not endurance athletes, so it really was hard on them. And so a lot of people go, "I'm not even, you should start running, start an exercise program." And people make a face like, "What did I do to deserve that?"
Right.
Which is kind of sad, because there's a whole world. I don't know how to describe it, Dick. And, I read Kenny Moore, who passed several years ago, a few years ago, and he was a world famous runner and writer.
Yes,
and,
absolutely.
He was a good friend of Frank Shorter, Steve Prefontaine, and all these. And he wrote articles for Sports Illustrated. And one time he said, trying to describe running to a non-runner is like trying to describe colors to someone who's been blind from birth.
Wow. See, now that when you think about it like that, it really.
What's your reference point?
Exactly.
What do you relate to? And so he goes, it's really a difficult thing to try to convince people or explain it to them. Because how do you describe colors, Dick? Oh, it's pretty. Well, pretty to you might not be pretty to me. Oh, it's, I go and run or ride my bike, and I just feel so happy. And people go, "Are you insane?"
Yes.
There's no way I'm going to feel happy when I'm out running or riding my bike, because it's nothing but drudgery. And Joe kind of saw that, because he was in the old school of track and field, where it was a lot of hard, intense interval work.
Yes.
Building this strength and building your tolerance. Nowadays, physiologists called it his ability to buffer lactate. Which is kind of a fancy way to say, your muscles get so fatigued, but you train them to keep going and work through it.
Right.
And that's not comfortable. That is painful. And so Joe did it and was successful, and you did it. I did it. A lot of runners, we were so motivated to try to increase our performance and to maybe, and then we can have a whole session with the psychologist of why would you put yourself through that? I wanted recognition. I wanted to be accepted by my teammates. I wanted my coaches to be happy with my performance. I wanted to be my parents to be proud of me. All of those things kind of, how do you wrap all that up into like, okay, we're going to go out and do a workout and it's going to be hard. And I'd step to the line and say, well, let's bring it on. What was my motivation? All those things and then some, and personal goals, wanting to set a school record, what have you. And so everybody's different. So most people go, I don't want any of that stuff. Well, how about good health?
Yes.
Would you like to live to be a good age? I just saw Clint Eastwood, a picture of him. He's 94. And I got to admit, he's showing it. I love Clint Eastwood.
Me
I
too.
grew up watching that
guy. He's 94 now?
94. And he's a little old man. And guess what? That's what happens when you age. But, I look at Bob Bartling at age 97.
Yeah.
I look at a lot of people, and Dick, you probably have many personal. I look at Bill Winmark at age 77.
Right.
That dude could put most 27 years guys to the waist.
Done. Look at Willie Nelson, just turned 91. He's touring as much today as he ever has.
And so sometimes genetics plays a part of this, and you're kind of blessed with these genes that kind of you just age slowly. And some guys seem to age. Man, I've met a lot of 40-some-year-olds that look like in their 60s.
Absolutely.
Or older. But we have a lot to say about our genetics, and giving them the opportunity. And what we're talking about is, doing some activity. I don't like, exercise sounds like I'm training
like work
for
and punishment.
Yes. Yeah. No, we're talking activity.
Right.
That is healthful, not hurtful. It's a big difference there between that. And now that first few days, and Beards, I'm going to go back in your memory bank, and I sure can go back in mine. My first few days of any kind of organized training were quite uncomfortable.
Oh,
because your muscles, I went out for football and the coaches didn't have a lot of time to whoop you into shape. And so they just kind of right from day one, boom, we're going to hit it, which is really for young teenage boys and girls, your bodies can handle it mentally. If you can get through it, you'll come out the other end.
Right.
But it was not a lot of fun. They called it Hell Week.
Sure.
The first week of football practice, because that's what it felt like. Now that's the far end extreme, because we were getting ready for competitive sports.
Well, and
my muscles hurt so bad I couldn't hardly walk.
I'm sure. And for me, when we talked about this in one of our early podcasts, but
right.
That first day I ever went out for a sport was cross country. I was a junior and we did a 3-mile run. I had to walk the last mile. And I thought my lungs were going to pop out of my chest. But, that's what's so neat about folks, especially with running. Maybe they've never done it or haven't done it since they were in high school, and now it's 20, 30 years later, is that, when those first couple of weeks, 3 weeks, it's tough. But all of a sudden, it's like you can feel yourself getting in better and better shape. And it's a wonderful feeling to see that the work you put in is paying off.
Yeah. And now I'm going to flip the coin to the other extreme. I'm not doing this for football. I'm not doing this to go out for cross country. I just want to be healthy. I want to be around for my grandkids. Yeah. I want to be able to play ball with my throw the ball with my grandson or daughter, and take them places, go roller skate or ski,
right.
In my 60s, my 70s, my 80s.
Right.
Because a lot of times in my generation, when you got to past 60 retirement age, I didn't see any of those people doing any of those things.
No.
It was kind of sitting on the porch watching us kids run around the front yard.
Right.
And it's kind of sad, because it would have been fun to have them come out and join us, sort of thing.
You betcha.
But, so the key thing here is to get off the couch or whatever you want, shut off the TV, is to go outside. And, I'm not going to tell you that first walk, because you don't start with running. You could sure try it, but it's not going to end well. No. Go for a walk and don't go for distance. I always tell people, look at now we all, it's on your phone. You're going to have your phone with you.
But go for time.
Set the timer. Go for time. And that's what Joe Henderson, that's his whole thing is it's counting miles. And I don't count miles anymore. My wife and I as soon as this podcast recording ends, we're going for a bike ride.
You bet.
Karen goes, well, how far? Let's go about an hour to 2 hours today. We did over 2 hours yesterday. It was kind of a big ride, 46 miles. Took us about 2 hours and 45 minutes. So guess what we're going to do today? A little shorter ride.
Yeah.
Because I like to enjoy my rides. I don't like to turn them into work and drudgery.
No.
So, we'll go out and do it, but we're not going to go as far as we did yesterday. But maybe the next day we can take it back up a little bit. But anyway, we're going to go for a walk. And don't laugh, Beards. I tell people, go out for 5 minutes in whatever direction you go and then turn around and head
there
back.
You go.
Now, people go, oh, you got to be kidding me. That's 5 out, 10 minutes? Yes.
Yep.
And if that was easy and you come back and say, that wasn't that big a deal. Okay, well, the next day or even later that day, if you feel like it, go out for maybe 10 minutes.
Right.
And then turn around and come back. Now, I would stay with you 5 out and 5 back day one. And if you come back with a smile on your face and going, that was kind of all right. I enjoyed this looked at my neighborhood.
And when you wake up the next morning, if you're not too stiff and sore.
Exactly. Now you're stretching a little bit and you don't have to double every day.
No.
But, maybe go 7, 8 minutes, come back. 10 minutes, come back. Well, you know where we're heading here, don't you, folks? We're trying to get you out there for 30 minutes. Now, when I said that, about half the men, because men think with their hearts, well, they think with other parts of their bodies too.
Right.
Women tend to think with their brains. But, if you can work up to 30 minutes, now I know half the guys are going to go out and do 30 minutes day one.
Sure.
And that's okay. And if you can go out and walk 15 minutes out and 15 minutes back and feel good the next day and look forward to doing it again.
Yeah.
More power to you. I mean, you got some good genetic gifts there. You should have been an athlete sooner, but kind of gradually. And like Dick said, that feeling of like, I feel better comes relatively quickly because our bodies adapt, and it's amazing how efficient we adapt.
Right.
And when you're starting at ground zero, it doesn't take much to move up a notch.
No.
To move up a notch. Now, unfortunately, when Dick got to notch 187, it got, I'm talking when he was, you're running at like a world-class level.
Yeah.
To improve.
It's a lot harder.
It's a lot harder to get those gains. They're there, but boy, it's really difficult and takes a lot of work and calculation to get it. But when we first start out, man, the gains tend to come fairly quickly. And
in big chunks.
That's cool. So now, once you say, okay, I'm walking a half an hour comfortably. Well, here's the deal. And this is the tough one. You start with your walk, and maybe 5 minutes into your walk, what are we going to do, Beards? You're going to break into what I call a trot. A jog.
Sure.
You can call it's running. It's running. If both feet are off the ground at the same time, and I don't think you can jog or trot without having both feet off the ground at the same. Otherwise, you're race walking. I guess is what it is. Because race walking, you have to keep one foot on the ground at all times. But you're going to maybe try to run a little bit. Now, here's the bad news. Running's a heck of a lot more work than walking. And I can't remember, Dick. Do you remember when you run? It's like your body mass, the weight coming down each stride is like, it's ridiculous. It's like 3 to 4 times.
It is
the forces. Then when you're
Don,
walking,
we should back up just a tad. Is that if people are serious about getting into a walking program, eventually maybe into running, boy, a good pair of running / or walking shoes is key, don't you think?
Oh, 100%. The good news is they're out there.
Yes.
And even they're making the cheap shoes better than they did in our day. I mean, I wear a pair of, I shouldn't mention names, I will, Puma 9190s. They had no cushioning. I probably paid $30, $40. They're a running shoe. I got a stress fracture wearing them, and they were terrible for running.
Yeah,
but
there's no
even the
cushion
cheap Walmart shoes would be better than that shoe was
for sure
40 years ago. And but I would spend the extra, I haven't bought a pair of running shoes, Beard. The Pegasus was a Nike running shoe that was around forever.
Yep.
New Balance. I'm trying to think of the 400 series, the 300 series were kind of the base level.
Well, yeah.
And they're probably $50 plus nowadays.
Yeah.
You go to Academy Sports, you'll see that. Go and talk to a salesman and say, hey, I'm starting a walk-run program. What kind of shoe do you think, and they want you to be happy and come back and buy some more. And so, pay the $35, $40. Don't pay the $15, $20 at Walmart. Go that extra
and don't
mile.
pay the $200-$300 for a pair of running shoes either.
Yeah, you don't need those yet. Maybe in a few years,
right,
or in a few months, you might want to move up. All right, so now you're going to run for a short period of time. And again, I don't know if I'd use my watch for this, because then you sometimes push yourself harder than you should, because I'm trying to make a minute of running before I start walking again. This is the hard part, where you have to use what they call perceived exertion. And perceived exertion is just what it sounds, what you perceive. And so, when you're out for a bike ride, because that's what I can relate to real well, And actually, I'm going to use Dick as an example. I remember going up to Minnesota to train with Dick in 1980 during Christmas, and you were in the middle of 120 to 140 mile training weeks. So you're going to run 212 at Houston in a few weeks on January 10th. But you're still you're still putting in the miles,
right?
And I remember all the Golden State junior college guys, Joe Bros and Tony Shaughnessy, and I'm going to leave out a bunch of guys there.
Tom
I can't remember their name. Tom Stambaugh and those guys would come over to Beardsley to do a long run. And here's what amazed me. I was a little nervous because, I'm running with some pretty classy runners here. And we're going to go to, you don't want to get dropped. You get dropped on a run. It's like a bike ride.
The ego sets in.
And you don't know where you're at. You're going to get lost. And hopefully your friends are friends and they'll say, we better hold up and wait for him to catch us because, he'll get lost. Well, we took off and it was a comfortable. And this is that perceived exertion. It was conversational. People are yapping. If you haven't figured out, Dick and I are yappers. We like to talk.
No.
And most runners, when you get around a bunch of other runners that you like and are comfortable with, it's just nonstop.
Yeah.
It's giving each other a hard time.
It makes the run go by a lot quicker.
Oh, exactly. We'll get into that too. Long story short, it was rolling. The course wasn't 100% flat, but it wasn't really hilly. But what I really appreciated about it, what I learned from this run was when Dick and these guys came to a hill, I thought, oh boy, here we go. We slowed down going up the hill. In fact, I just saw a podcast about a physiologist who was studying world-class cross-country skiers, athletes. And he said he was out on a trail doing a run, and he saw this gal ahead of him who was a world-class athlete because he had tested her in his lab.
Sure.
And as she came to this pretty steep uphill, she walked it. She didn't run it. She was out for a run, but she walked up the hill and then took off running again. And I remember running with you, Dick. I was thinking, man, we were cruising along. It was comfortable, 6 to 7 minute miles.
Yeah.
It wasn't, and for our level, that was comfortable. And I thought, man, I bet you for going up a hill, I know we dropped it down to probably 7 or a little slower pace until we topped the hill. And then the pace just kind of naturally went back to what it was before that. You guys didn't, or you didn't, and we all followed your lead. You didn't crank the hill. It wasn't like, hey, there's a hill, let's work it. No, that wasn't your goal on this run.
If we would have had a heart rate monitor on, the heart rate going up that hill would have probably been about the same because it was you're putting in the same effort, but because you're going up a hill, you're just naturally going to slow her back down a little bit.
And guess what? My perceived exertion really didn't change.
No.
I felt, and here's what we're trying to get people to, now this is what you got to wrap your head around. If you're going out for a walk and you say, wow, this is really, and I'm not going to pick on my wife, Karen, but sometimes when I used to ride with her and she wasn't on an e-bike, I would go at a pace that was so easy for me. Yeah. I'm not sure it did me a lot of, physiological benefit. I was out in the fresh air. I'm moving. It's better than not doing anything. But for me to, for her, I didn't want her outside of her comfort zone, her training zone. I would have to slow my pace down to the point where, and she was gracious and thanked me for not leaving her out there and I was there for her. I wasn't there for me.
No, exactly.
And so we got her an e-bike for many years ago, and now she could keep her perceived exertion and her target zone, if you want to use that, her perceived exertion, her heart rates. And now she's going at a speed that I have to be at my target zone, perceived exertion, to ride at the same speed. Wow. This was, the happiest guy when we bought Karen an e-bike. She was happy. I was really happy.
Absolutely.
Because now we're both out there getting a great workout and enjoying ourselves and getting the maximum benefits. Well, long story short, Joe Henderson came up with this long, slow distance concept because he was interval trained and it was burning him out. He got, the injuries, and we've all I've gotten caught in that myself.
Oh, for sure.
There's that old adage, no pain, no gain. And that is true when you're at the upper ends, when you're going to do speed work.
Yes.
It's going to be uncomfortable. And you can,
totally uncomfortable.
Totally uncomfortable. And I would say painful, because if you're doing 800 meter repeats, 1,000 meter repeats, mile intervals, hill intervals, you're building up lactate. This is this waste product that we can't get rid of. And it's this hydrogen ions that cause a burning sensation, your lungs, your legs, you get sick to your stomach sometimes.
Ears.
Because your hormone system, because of the fight or flight response, it's thinking you're running for your life.
Right.
Because it's like, man, this guy must have something chasing him because he's going faster than he normally goes. And so we say, well, we're going to get some adrenaline here to help him out. And then you also get this stuff called cortisol, which is a stress hormone, which in the short term can be helpful, but in the long term is disastrous because it has a lot of negative effects. So if you're chronically, like Joe and a lot of us might have done in our early days, do intervals, hard intervals, and we're highly motivated so that no pain, no gain. We learn to, we eat that for breakfast.
Exactly.
It's like hard as, give me some more, coach. It's kind of like you're a masochist. You're out there just taking
harder the better.
Day after, harder the better. Usually your body says, okay, I'm going to take care of this. And you'll either develop an injury, tendinitis, stress fractures, or you'll get sloppy. You'll step in a hole, twist an ankle. You go, what's that got to do with it? You're fatigued. You're not paying attention. Your balance is off a little bit. You might not think it, but it is. And then if that doesn't happen, you get what's called chronic fatigue syndrome, where you're so tired, you really can't even sleep at night. When you do sleep, you wake up and you don't feel rested. Your appetite goes down the tubes. We could talk about the libido that goes out the window. Sure. It's like, man, I just don't feel like doing nothing. Work. I mean, most people don't like going, if you're not doing something you enjoy, you kind of have to go to work because you pay the price, make money. And then all at once, that doesn't even sound motivation. The money ain't even, and do you see what's happening here? You start snapping at people and angry over minor little, these are all
at that point, you're probably overtraining.
You're definitely overtrained. And so we don't want any of this stuff to happen. Our body is so good at adapting when given the opportunity to recover from it.
And that's the key, Don.
The key is the recovery.
Is the recovery part of it. That was always my biggest problem was, a lot of times I don't think I ran as easy as I probably should have.
Me too. I agree 100%. I agree 100%. And I'm going to talk about, I got lucky with Jay Dirksen and SDSU had a running camp. And so they kind of taught us some concepts early on. My 15-year-old mind still remembers hard, easy principle. Hard. What's that mean? Well, you go hard one day. What's that mean the next day?
Yeah.
Easy. Now, easy doesn't mean laying on the couch eating, popcorn.
No.
Easy means you're going to go for your run or bike ride or whatever you like to do, but you're doing it at that perceived exertion that's comfortable. And you're breathing deeply, but you're not fighting for words. It's not one syllable answers. We
exactly.
tell our cardiac patients this all the time. We'd come around and go, hey, how you doing? What'd you do this weekend? Well,
not good.
And they're barely, you go, whoa, dude. Because these are men typically, and they think that no pain, no gain. We go, no, you're here to improve your overall health, recover from this heart event, and you're pushing yourself. We're not going to let you push yourself to a dangerous level because that's our job is to keep you safe. But we want to teach you that you don't need to do this to get the health benefits. But a lot of these guys are old athletes and they had that no pain, no gain concept. So anyway, this perceived exertion, if you use heart rate, which is pretty easy nowadays because just about anybody can get a heart rate monitor on their, I don't have an Apple Watch, but I hear that if you get one of those or a Fitbit, they'll read, they're fairly accurate. They're not as good as the chest strap. The chest
no, and Don, I've
got
a Garmin watch, that I wear that, it tells me how far I've gone, but it's also got a heart rate monitor. And I've checked it a few times where I've stopped and took my pulse.
Yeah.
And they're pretty darn accurate. But like you said, not as much as a strap, but still not bad.
No, it'll keep you in the zones we want to call it. And that's okay. And so, I had a Polar monitor back in the day that I wore a chest strap, very accurate, within 1 beat per minute compared to like EKG test. Yeah. So, you had to pay, it was about, back in the day, it was around $100. I don't know what they're probably in the same ballpark. And so this would give you an accurate readout. And so it's kind of like your speedometer. Well, what I used mine 100% of the time for was to keep me from going too fast.
Sure.
And you could actually set it to beep if your heart rate hit a certain level. So if I was out running comfortably, or now biking comfortably, and my heart rate, I'm just going to throw a number out there, 125 beats per minute. I could set that. And so if I went up the hill, as you were kind of describing, Dick, when we were out for a run, we could slow the pace down going up the hill. And guess what? My heart rate didn't drop. It stayed. And usually going up a hill, I have to really slow down.
Sure.
And maybe like that cross-country skier that the guy observed, she actually walked up the steep hill and was still able to maintain her, quote, perceived exertion target zone heart rate because she was fighting gravity. She didn't want to go beyond that day, so she walked up the hill. Now, for most men who think with not their brain,
right,
I'm never going to walk on a run. And you want to go, are you insane? Now, Joe Henderson, again, as he developed his, and Jeff Galloway, walk breaks are, there's nothing wrong with a walk break. It's actually a mental break. It's a physical break. You can go so much longer and farther and faster by taking, if you it depends on your goals and what you're shooting for, by taking small little walk breaks. Beards, when in my prime, I would a lot of times walk the aid station. Now, I wasn't trying to run 212, 211. Well, I wish I could have. But, if I'm in that low 220 range and you're getting towards the last half of the race, I'd come to an aid station and think, I'm going to grab my water and I cannot get anything down. It's slopping all over my face and stuff.
Sure.
I would take a short, I remember Bill Rogers ran 209, stopping to tie his shoe, stopping to drink. And they asked him, why'd you do that? Because he goes, I can't run and drink at the same time. And he was able to keep going fast because his break was seconds.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about too. Man, but when I did that, I have a story. Twin Cities, Paul Rather stopped at the side of the road. He was done. 1982 Twin Cities. I was done. I was looking for a porta potty. I think I told this story. And Paul Rather, I didn't know him personally. I knew who he was, and he was sitting there on the curb. I go, hey, do you know where there's a bathroom? He was, I don't know. He was not happy. He was trying to run fast.
Right.
And I said, I'm looking for a port. And so I'm standing there talking to this guy. And he had a bottle of his concoction of honey, tea, and who knows, Kool-Aid, sugar. And he goes,
sure.
Here, you want some of this? I mean, nice guy. And I said, yeah, thank you. And man, I took a couple big glugs of this stuff and it was sweet, tasted great. And I handed it back to him and I go, well, I'm going to keep going. I'm looking for a porta potty. And he goes, yeah, well, good luck or something. And so I take off running, and Beards, within 30 seconds, I get my stride back. I feel a little surge of energy. Well, it was the sugar, the glucose.
Sure.
I'm back running, end up running, and I'm 221. I think I got 7th, 8th place, whatever it was. And, I stopped for seconds, got a drink, kind of, mentally took a break. And so I don't know if this is making any sense to anybody, but when you're out for a run, there's nothing wrong with taking a break.
No.
When Karen and I bike ride, especially over 2 hours, we pretty much stop at about 1 to 1.5 hours at a gas station. We have a bike shop in a little town called Marshall. The owners are getting to be really good friends of ours. And I enjoy just stopping to chat them up a little bit. And it's a nice break halfway through the ride to get off your butt and give your tush a little bit of a rest.
No kidding. Especially
and
on
then
a bike.
when we take off, it feels like you're just starting. It doesn't feel like you've already ridden 20, 30 miles. And so I hope, this is making a little bit of sense to people. What time are we at? We're getting up there a little bit. To kind of wrap this, or bring it to a head, if you're starting a program, the key is systematic. It's called a systematic approach. I'm going to put a PowerPoint. I think I'll put it up on our website.
Good idea.
People want to go there. Yeah, I'll put it on our pod. I haven't put anything on there for months. And so I'll put this on there as PowerPoint. And it has all these things written out. And you can email. If you ever want me to, I've got this on my desktop, dunlapmike@hotmail.com. I'm an easy email. My name backwards at Hotmail. I'm that old that I still have Hotmail.
There you
I
go.
don't use Gmail. Anyway, I will send this to you. And it has all these broken down because this is what I shared with the Dick's campers when he would come to the Dick Beardsley Marathon Training Camp. And it's not complicated. You can buy books from Jack Daniels, Pete Fitzinger, Jeff Galloway, Joe Henderson. There's tons of materials out there. I try to crunch it down to here's what physiology 101, basically what you need, frequency, intensity, duration. Well, duration is easy to measure. It's time.
Right.
You can measure 30 minutes. That's easy. Phone, watch, whatever. Frequency is easy to measure. That's called a calendar.
Exactly.
I'm going to try to run or walk or train or do something. I would suggest, maybe starting out 4 or 5 days a week. Now you go, well, why not every day? Yeah, you can do every day. There's nothing wrong with every day. At the same time, if you wake up one day a week and just go, man, I just don't.
Yeah.
You can
take it off.
I like George Sheehan wrote, he said he woke up some days feeling that way, but he gave himself the chance. He'd put his stuff on, head out the door for 5 minutes. He goes, if I didn't feel better in 5 minutes, I'd turn around and head home. And he goes, very rarely did I ever turn around and head home because he was having a hard time getting out the door, but once he got out there, he was so glad he did. Again, so to measure, how often you're going to work out, it's just days of the week, I guess.
Exactly.
Now, at the upper levels, and I know Dick will speak to this, and I do too, we did double days. Double days,
Yes.
I started that in high school. I could do more work by breaking it up into 2 sessions a day. And my body was young and healthy enough to adapt to those bouts so close together.
Right.
Now, as I've gotten older, I do a bike ride in the morning. I could go out and this is if you do it right, you should be able to go out again, do it later in the day if you wanted to. I typically have other things I need to do.
Oh, I have no desire to run more than once a day anymore.
Exactly. But Beards, back in the day, it wasn't a matter of are we running twice a day. It's what time are we running in the morning and what time are we running in the afternoon.
There was no second thought about doing twice a days.
Not a one. And we were able to do more volume because we were splitting it up into 2 different bouts.
Yep.
Sunday, I would typically reserve to 1 run, but towards the end, as I was getting, kind of a little more serious, I'd add maybe you called it a shag, I think,
right.
A shag run or something. You do 20 in the morning, to go out for that 4 or 5 miler in the afternoon. I would do it a few times, just to kind of move, kind of get the blood pumping. That sort of thing. I'd rather go out and play some Frisbee. We didn't have Frisbee golf. I was thinking that Al Stratmeyer and I would go out on Sundays after a 20 miler, go to Tut Hill Park on the grass. We'd take off our shoes, and we did this purposely. And we'd go out there and throw the Frisbee up and down Tut Hill. And we would, and we'd have to chase that dang thing. And Tut Hill, we'd run around barefoot because it was clean, no glass.
Yeah.
You don't want to step on something. But we felt that running barefoot in the grass would give our plantar fascia, our Achilles, all those little tendons and ligaments in our lower legs, after doing a 20 miler, I mean, you're fatigued.
Oh, plus it just feels good on your feet.
The grass was cool, and it felt so good to run around there barefooted. So I would call that more of an active recovery. It wasn't really a workout.
No.
We were just out there moving and having fun and doing stuff like that. The bugaboo, what I'm trying to get to is intensity. That's the key here. Running for time, okay, or walking or cycling or swimming. How often am I going to do it? Okay, I can figure days. How many days a week am I going to be able to do this? I'm going to try. I always tell people I shoot for 7 days a week. I shoot to ride my bike 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Beards, how many days do you think I hit? 4 or 5.
Yeah.
Because life has a way. The weather will slow me down.
Sure.
Physical life. It's called life. Now that I'm retired, I'm riding more than ever because I don't have work. I had work responsibilities for Big Dick, you still got work responsibility.
Right. But I run at such a goofy early time that.
But you've learned a way to work around yours.
Exactly.
You do it before anybody else is up. And that's just your motivation and your brain saying, I'm going to do it. And this is how I'm going to get it done.
Right.
I tend to kind of go by, I have convenience time to do it now in retirement, where I used to have to kind of plan. I'd shoot for 7 days a week. I'd hit 4 or 5. If you shoot for 4 or 5 days a week, guess how many you're probably going to hit? 2 or 3?
Right.
Yeah. If you shoot for 2 or 3 days a week, what do you think is going to happen?
You might get 1, maybe none.
And then what happens? It falls away.
Then next thing you know, you're not doing it anymore.
No, if the habit hasn't been established, you're not
right.
seeing the benefits because you're not giving your body enough stimulus. So walking, running, swimming stimulates your body to make changes. We call them adaptations.
And then if you don't do it enough, you never get that over that hump where it starts to feel good and where you look forward to it.
Exactly. And we can prove it in the lab. I can put a person on a treadmill, and they call it there's the Bruce protocol stress test. If you ever go in for a cardiovascular workup, and they have these, they set the treadmill at a certain speed and grade, and every so often they change it faster, harder, and they can measure your fitness pretty accurately. And you take somebody with no training and put them on there, and if they make it 6 minutes at this, that's pretty good. 9 minutes would be off the charts. All right. So then they send them to, let's say, cardiac rehab, or they send them to a gym and they get a personal trainer, or they buy one of Joe Henderson's books and start following, or Jeff Galloway's, or Pete Fitzinger's. There's a whole bunch of, and they start following a systematic program, and they do it right. They do what you and I have been talking about. They start walking. They start with some walk runs as they're getting a little stronger. They're doing it 4, 5, 6, 7 days a week. And all at once they say, hey, let's bring you back in the lab and let's do that test again. And I'll bet you, I eat my hat if you don't see an appreciable increase in work capacity, they call it. You're
For
able to
sure you
go
would.
farther before you fatigue. Well, that's pretty cool. And then what really gets to be fun, and when your range is where Dick was saying, where you kind of like, you get out there and your mind you're not having to think about running or walking. You kind of do what we call free association. You start having this ability. I remember the saying that, exercise is a celebration of the body, but a playground for your mind. Because when you're out there on a run or a walk or a bike or swim, your brain doesn't have a lot to do.
Done. I've had so many people over the years ask me, what do you think about out there on the run? And I get back from run, I can't even tell you. My mind I let it go, and it's such a refreshing feeling.
It is. How many times do we have that in our daily lives anymore?
Exactly.
To just be alone with yourself. Now, some people find that uncomfortable. I think you need to kind of reevaluate what's going on here. If you can't be comfortable in your own mind, and that's, I hate, Dick, and we might speak to this, people use, substances to change their perception of reality. And so if you find reality uncomfortable for you, you need to take some hard look at what's going on,
exactly
in your routines and your relationships. Sometimes you need some counseling. There's nothing, I always laugh at people when they say, I would never go to a psychologist or a psychologist. Why? Well, that's like a guy having chest pain and say, I never go to a cardiologist.
Exactly.
I never go to a doctor. And you're going, dude, this could be something very,
and it's
serious.
All part of your well-being.
Oh, 100%. And yet when we get into this mind, body relationship, anytime the body, you get a little cold, you're running to the doctor, doc, it hurts when I do this. Don't do that. But anyway, you got tendonitis. We're going to give you some, medication. We're sending you a physical. Yeah. People don't hesitate. But whenever somebody's having thoughts that they are finding uncomfortable,
I know it's almost like a stigma.
100%. But it's getting better.
It's getting better. Thank the good Lord for that.
And I hope people like you and I can spread that word and people hear it and go, and I have sought, I'm not ashamed to admit it. I use Zoloft. It's an antidepressant medication.
Yeah.
You might say, why in the world would you need that? I don't know. But certain times, especially when I was in the work world, dealing with uncomfortable situations with employees, with patients, with administration, I just found it rather anxiety producing. And then the anxiety would lead to symptoms like chest pain.
Exactly.
Insomnia, loss of appetite, things like that. And then you start going, I'm not happy with the way I feel. What am I going to do about this? I spoke to my physician about it. Gee, that's a starting point. Now, my doctor, thank the Lord, was smart enough to say, I think I can help you with this.
Yeah.
Now, if he felt this was a little beyond his expertise, his training, he might have made a referral. Now, you know what that means? A specialist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, perhaps. But no, he said, this is something we can deal with. You and I can deal with it. And we have. And it's been, I think, fairly successful. And so, there's, and you go, well, what's wrong with you? I guess I'm a human. I'm a human being. I have emotions. I have thoughts. I'm not that smart and things like that. And so this intensity, though, we'll kind of wrap up with this, is kind of the key, is not going too hard. And this is a hard message for me to speak because I have to give it to myself. I did love the feeling of hard work.
I did too.
The satisfaction I got, and I get it mowing my grass. I went out and mowed my grass this morning, and by golly, if you can go out there and find a blade of grass that's sticking up a little higher than any of the others, I'm heading back out there to take care of that because I want to get done and look at it and go, that was a good job. Now with the workout, for some reason, I always wanted to get that feeling of that was a good job because I given 100%. The problem with giving 100% regularly is it leads to what we've already talked about: overtraining.
Yes, it does.
Overuse, breakdown. Our bodies, I use this analogy all the time with patients is, they call it the callousing effect. I grew up on a farm. I had calluses from shoveling, what I was, grain, the waste products from
manure.
Cows. We won't get into throwing hay bales that had twine strings with your hand. You grab it and you throw thousands of those things. And I had calluses. I have soft girl hands. I shouldn't say that. That sounds sexist. this microphone's one of the heaviest things I pick up anymore, and stuff. And bicycling, my hands rest on the handlebars. So if I go out and start raking leaves or grass, which I do occasionally, if I don't put on a pair of gloves, Beards, within a few minutes, I get a hot spot. Does everybody know what a hot spot is? That's your body's reaction to inflammation, to damage, because the skin is getting irritated from the friction of the thing on my, on my hand, and it's starting to get hot there. Now, if I don't do anything about that, Beards, what's going to happen?
You get a blister.
Oh, 100%. And that's tissue damage.
Right.
I broke it down to the point where it's and then, that can get infected.
For sure.
And you're not going to be able to keep working because your hands hurt so goddamn bad. You got to stop. Now, if I do this properly, maybe wear gloves for one thing, or every day go out and do my raking, start with 5-10 minutes, 5-10, spread it out. You don't have to do, if you have a load of mulch you have to put around your garden and you got that dumped in your driveway, you can spread that mulch over a period of time.
Exactly.
I guess you're saying I'm going to do it all in one day. By golly, you better have gloves. You better pace yourself.
For sure.
Because if you do it right, your hands will toughen. And you build up calluses.
Yeah.
And now you can actually go out there, and a lot of guys, tough old guys, they'll work. They don't get blisters anymore. Their hands are so callous. They're like they're wearing gloves practically. And so that's the same concept. If we give our body the ability, that's called rest and recovery, it will adapt. And so you get what's called a callousing effect. And, for runners and endurance athletes, it's these mitochondria, the power cells in the muscle. I'm not going to get into the physiology of it. It's kind of complex, but it's also kind of simple. We're born with this ability to move. And if we move in the right way, like walking, running, cycling, our muscles will adapt to make it more efficient. And one of the ways it does that is by developing more of these little power cells that take food, nutrient, oxygen, and create energy that spark the muscle. I know it sounds crazy. It's just like, wait a minute, spark? You mean there's electricity in us? 100%. There's electricity in us.
Right.
And that's what makes muscles move. If you ever grab a hot shot fence, Beards, did you ever on the farm?
More than once.
Oh man, muscles will contract involuntarily. I've got a TENS unit now. And if I crank that thing up on a muscle, it'll spasm.
Oh, I've had them before over the years.
Yeah,
and so right, your muscles will spasm.
Well, we're electric, and that's what lets us move. And so if we start training and doing it right by gradually increasing. Now, what Joe's and then we're going to conclude. Long, slow distance is what we call zone 2 now. Zone 2 is I think they rebranded LSD.
Yeah.
They took Joe's concept, and nobody gets credit for this. Joe didn't. He kind of talked about it and put it into words. And so I don't know if he didn't patent the idea of long, slow distance.
No.
It's not like somebody stole this from him, but we've kind of rebranded it, remarketed it. And athletes 100% follow this routine. And what they found, the best athletes do about 80% of their training sub-threshold in the comfort zone. Doesn't mean effortless. It means effort, but controlled effort. It's the 20-mile run pace.
Exactly.
Getting up in the morning, because you're going to do mile intervals this afternoon. You're still getting up in the morning and going out for a 5-mile run. Are you going to push that 5-mile run?
Easy.
Oh, it's sub-threshold. It's preparing you to do mile intervals. It's going to help you. You're going to be mentally just ready to burn it. And so 80% of your runs, miles, hours, minutes, should be at this zone 2, long, slow distance, fairly light to somewhat hard effort. Fairly light to somewhat hard. Fairly light means I feel like I'm doing something.
Yeah.
Somewhat hard means I don't think I want to go any faster than this.
Exactly.
This feels somewhat hard. Okay, then don't go any faster.
No.
But what if it's only 8-minute miles and my goal is to run 7-minute miles? 80% of the time, keep it at that 8-minute pace or slower. But 20% of the time, Beards, you know what's coming, don't you?
You betcha.
The pain.
Exactly.
And it doesn't have to be excruciating, but we're going to do the workouts. And this is where a coach comes in. What do I do? Well, you do shorter, faster than 7-minute pace. If you can do a 90-second quarter, that's 6-minute miles.
Yeah.
But if you're saying my race pace is 7, a 90-second quarter is not going to be comfortable.
No.
So guess what I'm going to have you do? I'm going to go have you do a bunch of them, but I'm going to have you take a rest break so you can do a bunch of them. You can't string together 5 90-second quarter or 4. That'd be a 6-minute mile. But can you do 4 90-second quarters if I give you a minute or 2 minutes of rest in between each one? Yes. Now what's happening? Your efficiency, your these neuromuscular pathways, your ability to process lactate, all these things you want happen. But before we can get to that, what do we have to do? We have to build that base of strength and endurance and ligament, tendon strength.
And that takes a bit of time.
Beards, this is the part people aren't going to want to hear. It takes months to years.
Yes.
I don't know. I can ask Dick Beardsley, from the time he started running to your best performance. Think about that question, Dick. You started at 17, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I started about 15. You started at 17. You set your best performance at age 26?
I had just turned 26 the month before. So basically 8 years.
I started at 15. I hit my PR at age 25. And so 10 years.
Yeah.
Now, it took us 8 and 10 years to get to now you might say, yeah, but you guys were teenagers. You couldn't run that 208 as a teenager. No, that's when we started. I guess, okay,
right.
Maybe we would have started at age 21, 22. Maybe it wouldn't have taken 8 or 10 years. It would have taken 4 or 5 years, 3 or 4 years.
But still, we're not talking days, weeks, months. We're talking years.
No. Yeah. So if somebody comes up and says, hey, I've never run a step in my life, Beards, and I think I'm going to run the Grandma's Marathon. Yeah. What advice you got for me? Do it next year.
Do it next year. Exactly.
Yeah. Because to get in shape from May 15th to June, what is it, 15th or so? It's about a month away.
Yeah.
Okay, Twin Cities this fall. Yeah, I think you could get to where you can finish Twin Cities this fall.
And that's the key. Finish.
That's the finish. Now, don't focus on time. If you go in there saying, I want to break 3 hours at Twin Cities this fall.
Don't think about it.
Don't think about it. Now, you could be an exception. You might be one of those gifted people that are the Dick Beardsleys of the world. And we can get into that someday. I always sit and people ask me, well, why did Dick get to be so fast? And I go, that's a great question. I think Dick had the right mental attitude. He wasn't afraid of hard work. I think there's probably a lot of, your optimism.
I wish I knew the exact answer.
I think genetics played a part of it, Beards. And you can argue, there's no true answer. How do you really know?
No.
But I think, these mitochondria that you develop with training, some people develop more than other people. There's been studies that show some people, they're called low or non-responders. It's about less than 10 to 15% of the population. They train and they really don't see the progression that the average person sees. That's kind of sad. Have you ever known an athlete that just worked his tails off and didn't seem to get any better, even though he was doing everything right? Do you ever know an athlete that worked his tail off and became a national world-class athlete?
Yeah,
they're out there, but they're kind of like the other. Most of us are in the middle. Most of us are going to improve. How much we improve depends a lot about us, work, doing it right, recovery, nutrition, mental attitude, all these good things. But then there's that unmeasurable, the genetic component that allows some people to develop more mitochondrial. I saw one study that showed some people that they had a range of responders. One guy only responded like a 15% increase in performance. One guy had a 96% increase in performance.
Yeah.
15%, 96%. They both did the same work.
Big spread. What
do you attribute that to?
We can get into more of this maybe on another podcast.
100%.
It fascinates me, and this has really been fun today. We sure hope everybody's enjoyed it, and we want to thank everybody for listening. And if you have any questions for Dunn or myself, comments about the show, you can contact us directly on our website at beardsanddunpod.com, or you can leave us a comment on our Facebook, Instagram, or X, all at Beards and Dunn Pod. And I'm looking forward to next week.
I know, and I am too. And if you're on YouTube, please hit subscribe. We'd love to have you. That way you get notices whenever one of these things pop up. And I'm not hesitant. If you want more information or that PowerPoint, dunlapmike@hotmail.com. I'd love to hear from people. And as you can tell, I don't mind chatting. Dick, have a great day. I always tell Dick whenever I talk to Beards, stay in the boat. Stay in the boat. I don't want to hear about some accident with Dick Beardsley in the boat.
And Dunn, you stay on the bike, buddy.
I love it. Hey, have a great day,
We'll talk next week.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.